Islam Makhachev is one of the biggest stars in our sport. If I would have told you that 2 years ago, I would have sounded foolish. If I would have predicted it 4 years ago, you would have laughed at me. And I'd have done the same to you. It was one of these things where he's got this great record. He'd never said a word. And the words that were being said about him weren't words that would make him a star. They were all words that associated him with Khabib, who was a star. And he was Khabib's choice. And he was the heir apparent to Khabib's throne. And that story is just, it's very hard to overcome that. You'll remember when Nate Diaz did. Nate Diaz was always Nick's little brother. That's who he was. And then Nate, when he became a bigger star, Nate tried to lessen it. Nate tried to push himself down to make sure that the general, Nick, stayed on top. It was a respect thing. And I just share for you, it can be a slow road when you take that road. But you can still get there. And I watched it happen. I happened to be in the building. And it was not the elements that you always think were the two best guys, and then you become the best guy because you beat the best guy. And then once you're the best guy, you become the most popular guy. Like, it doesn't work that way. That's a belief, but it's a false belief. And when it happened for Islam, was in less than 5 minutes that he spent in the cage with Moicano. I was in the building that night. And I'm telling you, it was as close to a Rocky moment. You understand when people talk about that scene? There was this Rocky movie. Rocky's going to go take on the Russian, but he's going to do it in Russia. So everybody's against Rocky. But by the time the fight's over, the Russian fans are now actually cheering for Rocky. He's won their respect. And it was as close to one of those moments. But the live building also understood something. And the live building saw and sensed something that the TV viewer did not have. And that was Umar going down in the match prior to Islam's match. Same locker room, same energy, same coaches. The coaches leave Islam alone in his locker room, which is the last thing that an athlete about to go, he needs support. The last thing that you want to do is leave him alone. They had to. It was the way that the deck got drawn. They've only got so many coaches. These coaches are going to coach him, and they're going to coach this other guy. Very common thing. Uncommon that you have the two biggest stars and you got to do it back to back. So the entire locker room leaves and goes with Umar. They come back and the energy in that room is now down. Umar had never been beaten. And Umar was not favored to be beaten that night. So when that gets done, they got to get back there. They've got to console Umar and create a positive environment and keep Islam's head on straight. To take on an opponent who he never trained for, never thought about, never thought he was going to face. And when he came out and was able to execute so efficiently, when you knew that wasn't the best version of Islam, it couldn't be. It's a situation that Islam has never been in and likely will never be in again. And he was still able to compartmentalize and execute. And he wins over the crowd. It was this amazing thing. But I mean, there was a passion. Okay. So Islam still doesn't have that magic opponent. And the bad news for Islam that night is he still hadn't found that magic opponent. As a matter of fact, the discussions for Islam at that time and for the rest of Islam's time at 155 pounds, which dates back to just over 3 weeks ago when they stripped him, was rematches. Right? If Islam was to get in there with Charles, no matter how good he looked or how good he performed, it was one of these things where it was a rematch. And Islam had been in that spot. It was very hard to get traction. He's out there fighting Volkanovski. But he was a 3-1 favorite. The expectation was so high, and Volk was from a weight down. So when Islam breaks into 170, it is for parity reasons. Oh my goodness, this is so helpful to Islam. So incredibly helpful to his career, future legacy, standing within the sport. But Jack's not the guy. No matter how good Jack is, It can't be known coming out the back end. It's got to be a perception leading in. There is only one thing in this sport, one word, that keeps the lights on. I know it gets told to you guys it's knockouts and it's oh wow moments and it's great fights. It's none of those things. None of those things bring in money. One word, anticipation. It does not matter if your fight is so good it's clipped and put on SportsCenter. Your business is over by the time that it happened. There has to be an anticipation prior to the contest. That's what gets the tickets. That's what builds the energy. That's what pushes the buy button. Okay. And Jack's just not the guy. And I say that to you in the most respectful. I couldn't be a bigger Jack supporter from day one. Jack's awesome. But that isn't a widely known thing. And even people in the know, there's plenty of people that think Jack's going to win. Plenty of people think Islam's going to win. Not enough people battling over that idea or passionate towards that idea. So I share this with you because we've got this major step for Islam, which is going to 170 pounds, which creates a parity. But Jack isn't the guy. Now, that's okay. That just means we got to get through Jack. Then everything opens at 170. Kamar Usman's popping his head in there. Shavkat's coming back. Ian Gary is not to be played with. Colby Covington isn't going anywhere. Lots of things. Lots of great things. Okay. I want you to stay with me on this, though, because I want to go back to Volkanovski versus Islam Part 1. 3-1 underdog is what Volk was. Volk had one thing to offer, though, which was a number 1 pound-for-pound ranking. And the one thing that Islam had to offer is the one thing they were fighting for, which was the reigning world championship. But this was a champ moment. When Volk walked to that ring, they had not stripped him, and he had not vacated. He was the reigning champion at 145 pounds. So when Volk gets into the ring that night, whether he wins or he does not win, he wakes up the next day champion of the world, headed for a main event, secured in a title shot. And when I just look back at what a great fight that was, one of the great moments, that fight is such a Hall of Fame contest. And when I look back at how incredibly close Volk was to getting his hand raised, I do believe it was a burn the ships moment. He had not burned his ships. He could go back. He hadn't burned his ships where he must find victory because there was no other way home. And Islam is continuing to speak to the idea that he never wanted stripped at 155. He wanted to be able to do both. That if he wanted 170, he wasn't then going to relinquish 155. He was going to defend. This was his idea, was to go back and forth. We've only seen that happen one time. That was with Amanda Nunes. That scenario was very different, but I just share for you, Islam's still clinging to that. He's still pushing that narrative. I'm the guy. I never lost. That's my division. That's my belt. I got no problem with Ilya. Ilya needs to do one thing well at 155, and then I'll see him. And it can be anything. His story's never changed. Islam's story has never changed, but his circumstance has. And I want him to embrace it. Because Jack is a hard fight. Jack's a really hard fight. And if you get through Jack, it only gets harder. And if Islam does have this idea of I can go back to 55, I'm safe at 55, I was dominant at 55. If he doesn't let his body grow, if he doesn't enjoy the fruits of his labor, enjoy the fact that he can have more calories when he's training, if he doesn't enjoy that because he's living the lifestyle and keeping his eye on being able with striking distance to get back to 155, he's going to put himself inadvertently in the same spot that Volkanovski was in. And when you're playing a game of it, and this only makes this much difference, but that's the game we're playing. We're playing a game that's this close. So it's just my thought, but it's also a little bit of my concern. And it's just something All that has to happen mentally is Islam has to let go. That's it. To find a new relationship and to be successful in that relationship, all you have to do with your past, you just got to let it go. And now you're available. Now you're available to find this other great relationship. And I think Islam can have that at 170 pounds. But he's got to commit mentally. He's got to commit himself to the task fully. And that job is at 170.